my heart was actually stopping. So I was clinically dead 20 times. So clinically dead means, your heart has stopped beating for 30 seconds or more, and you've stopped breathing for 30 seconds or more, both at the same time. And that's what happened to me in that summer. And then again in 2013 and 2018. And it's been quite the adventure. So I haven't quite spent as much time being dead as I have been alive, but
that's a good thing. That's a good thing, Fred.
Yeah, the scales are getting a little too close for my liking.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson, and I'm back with another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and it's always a pleasure to be here and continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, you've got it locked to episode 209 of the podcast, and I'm very pleased to welcome Fred Rutman as today's guest. Now, Fred, through his very unique story, will provide some insights on navigating the trials of life, and we've all experienced them where we face adversity after adversity after adversity, and Fred knows all about this. See, actually, he was given the name Repeatedly Dead Fred by a friend for that exact reason. He's had 11 heart procedures in 11 years, and he's also been clinically pronounced dead dozens of times. His story truly is a unique one, and one that you'll be amazed to hear. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Repeatedly Dead Fred. Enjoy. Hey, Fred, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living podcast. It really is a pleasure for you. Thank you for spending the time like this.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. You're kind of a legend around here, so.
But I'm honored. Fred, this is it's been a labor of love. It's something that I believe in, and the opportunity to share and possibly help others and impact others is really a joy for me. And so I'm glad to do this. I'm glad that you're here, because really, quite frankly, if it wasn't for individuals such as yourselves that are willing to come and spend time and share with me, I don't think I'd be able to offer the same type of value. So I do appreciate you and your very unique story, because you just sort of mentioned that you've got the nickname Repeatedly Dead Fred. But as we joke with that, there's some truth behind that. So maybe as a starting point, you can sort of explain how you got the name Repeatedly Dead Fred.
Well, the name came from a friend of mine, Deanna Petrini, who's a coach, and she came up with it because that's exactly what happened to me. In the summer of 2009, I started passing out, or that's what the doctors thought initially, on a regular basis. And it turns out I wasn't actually passing out. My heart was actually stopping. So I was clinically dead 20 times. So clinically dead means, your heart has stopped beating for 30 seconds or more, and you've stopped breathing for 30 seconds or more, both at the same time. And that's what happened to me in that summer. And then again in 2013 and 2018, and it's been quite the adventure. So I haven't quite spent as much time being dead as I have been alive, but
that's a good thing. That's a good thing, Fred.
Yeah, the scales are getting a little too close for my liking.
Understood. And so some background understanding what's happening to you, or what was the cause for you to continue to experience this?
Initially, they kept trying to prove I was having a heart attack. And, you know, this isn't to diss the medical system or anything like that. It's just, this is just what happened to me. And you would think, after you've tested for 10 times or whatever, and you don't see the results that prove you're having a heart attack, you might want to look for something else. And it didn't. It just was a happenstance that they eventually figured out that my heart was stopping and that I have a condition. It's called a severe onset heart block, which means the electrical system that distributes the signals that tell your heart when to beat. That whole system started dying. It started dying very quickly. And if you have no heartbeat, tend to die, I guess.
Right.
So, and then compounding that was the fact that most times my heart stopped, I also collapsed and hit my head. So even though I've got a big oversized noggin, I still had a lot of concussions and brain trauma and
understood
things of that nature.
Is this a rare condition, Fred? That is, or how common is it?
It seems to be pretty rare for my age bracket. So I was in my mid 40s when this happened. It usually doesn't happen to men till they're in their mid 70s. So I guess you could say I'm an overachiever. I don't know.
Maybe, but I would imagine in this instance you'd rather not be. I would guess.
Yeah, it's been an adventure, but then a lot of positive things have happened to me because of it. I'm a very, very different person. I think I'm a much better and a much nicer and I'm more filled with gratitude than I was back then. I ended up writing a book out of it and starting a podcast, and I get to be on podcasts with people like you that are out to change the world. So, there's trade-offs. Yes, it was like not so pleasant, but then it turns into pleasant if you let it.
So let's kind of go on that, because I think that's a really good point. I'm a big fan of sort of the transformations, Fred, right? What happens with the before and the after. What sort of definitive things, or what has your message been since coming out on the other side of these experiences?
There's so many messages, and if you're a person of faith, like I'm Jewish, I have a strong belief in God, and the first question when people hear this story is, well, I guess somebody wants you here for a reason,
right? And
then you have to say, well, okay, what exactly is the reason?
Right.
We can have our best guess, but until I stop being repeatedly dead Fred and being continuously dead Fred, I don't think we really know if we've hit the mark or not.
Right.
So many lessons. I mean, there are so many people out in the community that want to help other people.
Yes.
In whatever way they can. If it's giving you a little money, if it's giving you a ride, giving you emotional support. And for some reason, I just had a couple of communities that just enveloped me and, adopted me, for lack of a better term. And I think it's a Malcolm Gladwellism that as you age, you become sort of the composite personality of the people you spend the most time with.
Gotcha.
The 5 or 7 or 10, however many people. And I think that's exactly what's happened to me. These people that became more of my community, they're just outstanding people. They're givers. They're selfless. They just want to help, not for anything in return, just because they can.
Yes.
And I've thankfully absorbed a lot of that.
So as a way of sort of bringing out the best in others, what it sounds like, right? That they want, and that in turn they want to give and want to help and want to extend themselves, which is tremendous.
So in your world, like in the basketball world, you have every so often one of those transcendental players that makes everybody else on the team better.
Right.
And that's what I seem to have found myself in the midst of. all these people that seem to want to make other people, including myself, better.
Yep.
And it's been amazing.
Well,
Nothing I could have imagined.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I imagine people often will ask you what it's like being dead or what it feels like. Is that a common question?
It's a pretty common question. I think there's no one answer. I think in the media, we've seen these stories of near death.
Right.
And people have the come to the light and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think each person has their own individual journey. I didn't have any of those come to the lights.
Okay.
If I had died once or twice and that didn't happen, I could fine, it just didn't happen. But after like 30, 40, 50 times, like not even once,
right,
I feel, kind of ripped off.
Gotcha.
I mean, I really should have. I've had some out of bodies, so I guess I shouldn't complain. Okay. The out of bodies are pretty, unbelievable on their own. But
sure.
I think we're all so individualistic. We have our own DNA. We have our own spiritual DNA. Mm-hmm. So what happens for me is likely not going to happen for you. I think.
Yep.
I mean, there's no way to prove or disprove this, but it's just my instinct at this point.
Understood. No, I understand. And so I do want to clarify, because the medical care that you've received, has that contributed any way to what's been going on with you, or has that been okay?
Yes and no. Medical professionals are like anybody else. They've got their own cognitive bias, and they get stuck in their positions, and mm-hmm. So could they have found out what was going on with me more quickly? Definitely, under different circumstances.
Right.
It just would have taken the right doctor at the right time.
Right. Almost like to ask the right question, right? Or the right probing.
Yeah. Or not just look at me as like, okay, here's a really fat white guy in his mid-40s, not exercising enough. Obviously, he doesn't eat well, must be having a heart attack.
Right. I understand.
So, you just needed one of those doctors or one of those nurses to say something's not right. And then, it was just a comedy of errors. It's just like anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. So when they figured out what was going on with me, the solution is a pacemaker.
Okay.
And so pacemakers, size of a pocket watch computer that goes inside, and it replaces your heart signals. Mm-hmm. Mine started failing in 2013, so 4 years later.
Okay. And
I went through the whole thing, because when the pacemaker fails, I'm 100% dependent on it. So if it stops, again, I stop, collapse, hit your head. So I went back to ground zero, essentially. And I've just had a series of faulty pacemakers, which are essentially pretty much statistically impossible for this to have happened to me.
Right.
In the way it did. So in November, I just had, I think, my 5th pacemaker. Like my last 2 pacemaker surgeries, the doctor has done some pretty Harry Potter level wizardry in keeping me alive. Like, I think the last one in particular, no one has ever done that particular surgery before.
Okay.
So I am, a walking miracle to some degree.
I would imagine, like, you're not the typical patients doctors see. I mean, you've probably got a few of them scratching their heads at times.
Oh, yeah, more than a few scratching their heads in time. The last surgery I think my doctor and his mentor and a few other doctors spent about 10 or 12 hours doing a surgery pre-plan. And that's for a surgery that's done almost 1 million times a year.
Right.
Like it's a pretty common,
Right.
and they had to do a variant for me.
Wow.
And it still didn't go right.
Right.
So,
Wow.
you know, it was, your typical, it should be 25 to 45 minutes and it took 3 hours.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it was wild. The doctor's on the phone with other doctors, like, this is what's going on. And, what do we do now? And what are my options?
Right.
Stuff like that.
Right.
And I'm awake for this whole thing.
Yeah, I see, and I was actually going to ask you, like, all these things are going on. It's you're not the expert here. You just know these things are happening to your body. It's your body, and you're experiencing them. But what's kind of going through your mind is doctors are pulling their hair out, trying to figure out what's going on with you. You're back in. I mean, you probably had a ton of surgeries. I'm not sure how much you had, but it sounds like quite a few times you've been under the knife there. Like, what's going through your head when all this is happening?
Well, not as much as you would think, because you're fairly sedated for the ones that are
okay,
where they don't put you under.
Gotcha.
So you're not, things aren't going right because you can look at the clock on the wall and say, okay, we're way over time here. So, and you don't want to talk to the doctor because he's inside your heart.
He's busy. He's tied up, let's just say.
Yeah. You can joke a little bit with the nurses, and some doctors are okay with that, and others are like, "Would you shut that up?" We're every time you talk, you're making your chest move. So, depending on the surgeon you have and their temperament, it makes a difference. Got you.
Though definitely a unique experience, and one that again, it's unique. I guess that's all you can say is it is a unique experience. What made you want to document this in a book?
It started off with a couple of roots, I guess. People are always asking me, what happened to me, because it was so unique. People get to know your story. They visit you in the hospital, and people always seem fascinated by it. And then I was asked to do a couple of talks on it. And, when the people you're telling this story to, their jaws are all dropping. So, you've got a good story.
Right.
And then my therapist suggested I try some journaling, because there's a lot of trauma here. I know I make light of this and I joke and try and put it in a positive framework, but there's a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD, and I tried journaling, and I'm just not a journaler, but I had some notes, and then someone suggested I enter a short story contest. And I tried doing that, and then I just went way over the word limit, and so and then it just sort of, this is kind of, ruined my life financially. I've got to do something. Maybe I can turn this into a book where I can, I'm not going to be a J.K. Rowling's or anything.
Sure.
Excuse me, but maybe I can turn this into, a little bit to pad up my pension.
Sure.
And do some good.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, to capture this medical experience in your memoir as in a form of a memoir, I think would be a good thing, because it allows people to sort of join you on this journey, right? This journey that's full of unknown, uncertainty, all sorts of questions, I'm sure, swirling in not only your head, but your doctor's heads. So to be able to capture some of these things, I think is a very good thing. And the title is the summer I died 20 times, which will certainly capture people's attention, I think.
And I think it's also part of it is I want to pay it back or pay it forward, however you want to phrase it.
Okay.
There's a lot of people going through a lot of bad stuff, and nobody's ever going to walk exactly in my shoes, and I'm not going to walk exactly in their shoes. But if they can see, hey, there's somebody out there that went through like a real lot of stuff,
Right.
and could come out of it with a smile on his face and hopefully being a positive influence to others, maybe I can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
a powerful.
that's what I'm hoping.
Well, and you know what, Fred, you absolutely, that's exactly what you will do. I mean, that's part of the messaging from this podcast. We talk a lot about that. You know, we there is a bold framework that we operate. Bold is an acronym, BOLD, and it's how to live a more audacious life. And the B is better than yesterday, which encourages constant development and getting better and improvement. The O in that framework is for outlasting adversity, and which is exactly what you've continually done at least 20 times that summer. You've outlasted adversity, and why that's so significant is because it's when you get through the most challenging points in your life, the things that you didn't think you can get past or get through or get over or get around. When you get to the other side, that's where the greatness lies, right? And that's the things that were intended for us. And so that's exactly what you're encouraging people to do. And so I don't doubt that your messaging will resonate with people for sure, and they'll understand the importance of outlasting adversity. Just to round out that circle, the L in that framework, BOLD, is L for live your truth, which is really encouraging authenticity, and then D is disrupt the norm, which is, you know, be your own trailblazer and forge your own path. And so, you know, those four combined together, you know, will put you on that pathway to audacious living. And I think through, again, but the outlasting adversity, which I bring that up because of that for you, the O I'm dedicating to you because it absolutely is significant and it means something. And if more people can recognize that, they've got to keep going, they got to keep pushing ahead and not allowing the moment, circumstance, however difficult it is. And I don't want to dishonor or minimize it. Absolutely, what you're going through is challenging, but there's cause and reason for why you got to keep pushing forward.
And further your point, I'm not saying this is easy.
Right.
I'm not saying it has been easy.
Yep.
Excuse me, but we all have different gifts, and you know, we all have a resilience gene, and it needs to be exercised. You know, nobody teaches us how to be resilient. My parents had very difficult lives, and you know, I watched them, you know, struggle through their life, but I don't recall them ever saying, okay, this is how you be resilient.
Right.
You know, so it's something you have to develop. It's like any other muscle. If you want to learn how to run a marathon, you got to start taking those steps, but you have to be aware that there are those steps that can be taken. And it's just, I guess it's a blessing that I've been given, that I've been able to show this resilience and have been put in the right situation.
Right.
But you do get in the right situation by asking for help. And I think that's
Which is
a big thing that people these days are a little reluctant to do, because depending on their mindset, they think if they ask for help, that means they owe somebody. People don't like owing somebody. But if you don't ask for help, you're also denying their opportunities to do good in the world. Right.
Right. You know, it's funny as you sort of talk about the asking for help. There's the vulnerability piece that we have to be okay with too. I mean, you know, for a very long time, you know, vulnerability was seen as a sign of weakness, but it actually is a form of strength. And when you can demonstrate that you're being vulnerable to people, and obviously you don't want to overextend yourself to everyone, right? But certainly you have to be very selective and mindful of who, you know, the times that you choose that vulnerability. But I think when you can do that, you are demonstrating strength. The other thing that came to mind as you were talking about resilience specifically, and it's so funny because, and you're right, no one teaches us that. It's not a thing that's naturally taught. It's what you learn in the moments, right? It's when you go through those moments of challenge that you keep pushing ahead. And that's why I think a story such as yours can help people, right? Because they can understand, as difficult as it may be, as challenging it is, I've got to keep going. So
I mean, what's the option? Like, so, okay, just don't have that next surgery that keeps you alive.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So in your case, like, okay, one or the other. I wonder if you can describe maybe how difficult things had gotten for you, like when you, because I would imagine it's worrying you down mentally, physically, emotionally.
Mhm. Definitely all of those. Um, One of the unique things about my situation is because I had so much head trauma,
Hmm.
I I wasn't cognitively all there for a lot of this journey.
Okay.
And so it wasn't I wasn't really aware that I was dead. I mean, it's still hard to wrap my head around that I was dead and how incapacitated I was on so many levels until your brain starts to heal.
Mm.
So, in one way, it's a blessing that I wasn't so aware of how dire my situation was.
Right.
But as more of my memory comes back, and it makes me, kind of a little pissed that all this happened to me. And you'll notice if you read my book, it's it's very scattered in some places. You do a lot of time traveling
Right.
because that's the way my memories came back to me.
Got you.
It wasn't a linear process. So I might have written something down in 2017 and then I didn't have the next thought until 2021.
Mm.
And so a lot of things happened in between that and I go back and forth and back and forth. So
Got you.
it's, some people will have a little bit of trouble with that writing format, but you know what? I'm not Shakespeare.
Right. Right.
I'm just a guy telling a story.
Right. No, and again, I'm glad that you did tell your story. I do have to touch on the manner in which you use humor, because Fred,
Mhm.
it can be very, very helpful. I like to laugh myself personally, so I
Mhm.
find great joy in cracking a joke or enjoying funny
Mhm.
moments. But it would seem to me that this is something that you've been very intentional about in terms of using humor as a way of not only just furthering your message, but I would imagine helping you cope in the situation as well.
Mhm. My dad was a world-class punster.
Okay,
He never met a pun he didn't like,
gotcha.
and um, I've got some of that gene. Obviously, I I think you have to use humor in situations that are very dark, and uh, some of the jokes in the book I wrote just for myself.
Okay,
Um, some of them I wrote as homages to, great comedians of the past that I've learned some technique from. So I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy.
okay.
I, I watch it whenever I can,
Mhm.
and I'm slightly sarcastic. Some people will call me more than slightly sarcastic.
Right,
Some people will call me outrageously sarcastic.
understood.
And I think putting all those elements into a story uh, contribute to the overall effect of the story. So I could tell it very factually, on August 19th, my heart stopped. Okay. you know, so it sort of loses the impact. You have
Sure.
to make a story compelling.
Right, right, right.
And and we have a number of tools that allow us to do that. So
Sure.
hopefully I've picked the right tools and the right combination.
Again, I'm happy that you documented what your journey, because I think it's really, really important. And again, I love the whole idea of sharing to help others recognize that if hey, if I can do this, and I get it, all these people's circumstances are not going to be the same, and they will not be the exact same. But there's still, I still feel like, and I think you agree with me here, that you can still draw from those experiences to help others.
For sure. I do find it a little perplexing when I find out people have been going through stuff and they choose to keep it in their little circle. And I think, why wouldn't you let other people help you with this burden? So it doesn't compute in my mindset, but it's their lives. They have to do what they think is best
Sure,
for them.
sure, understood. Um, Can we sort of give an update as to where you're at now, health wise, just so people can understand what's happening with you and where you are in this part of your journey?
Sure. Currently, I'm feeling really, really well. I had a secret weapon in my recovery.
Okay.
It's called intermittent fasting.
Okay.
There's kind of a buzz about it these days, but the thing about intermittent fasting is it's not a traditional diet.
Okay. Yeah.
It's, as my friend Jen Stevens, she wrote the book Fast, Feast, Repeat. It's been a New York Times bestseller for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
Intermittent fasting is the way we used to live when we didn't have the ability to go to the store and buy, Captain Crunch and eat all that lovely ultra processed food.
Right.
We were all intermittent fasters. We just didn't know it at the time. That's the way our bodies like to live.
Right.
And it's actually a health plan with a side benefit of weight loss.
Okay.
And one of the benefits of intermittent fasting is it accelerates one of the body's self-healing processes called neuroplasticity. And that's been one of the main contributors to my recovery and getting my cognitive faculties back to where they should be.
Right.
It does a million other things, but we only have an hour. So
how did you stumble on it and recognize it as a helpful thing to you in terms of your journey?
I was visiting my cardiologist and I was waiting in the exam room, and he walked in and he threw a book at me and he said, "Buy this, read this, do this."
Okay.
But only after we talked to your other 6 doctors,
Gotcha.
because I'm a pretty complex case. And that book was called The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung,
Okay.
who's a Toronto nephrologist, kidney specialist.
Okay.
And he found that he was helping he had a lot of type 2 diabetic patients, and he found this was reversing their diabetes and all sorts of other health benefits. So my doctor had been to a seminar that Jason had put on, and it's a very sciencey book.
Mm-hmm.
So I read the book and it made sense and gave it a shot, and it's been very effective. At one point in my life, I was about 340 pounds.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what I weigh now, but I've gone from a size 60 pants to 38-ish.
Wow. That's significant. Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And I ended up a moderator in an intermittent fasting group. And there was 350,000 odd people in that. And I see what happens to other people when they fast and all the health benefits they get. So while it's not, a traditional medical study,
Right.
you also don't get medical studies of that volume. And when you see the results presented over and over and over again,
Right.
There's some reality to it.
Gotcha. Well, look, Fred, I'm first off, I'm so appreciative that you and I said at the top, I was happy to have the the podcast. I'm really happy at the end of the conversation. Really pleased that you spent the time. I appreciate you sharing. For me, the sharing is a big piece in all this that rounds out that circle very nicely, and because you can help others. So I do appreciate you sharing. The book is phenomenal. Again, documenting that journey, but just overall, just congratulations on the work that you've done for yourself and now for others. I think you have made a difference by being very open and vulnerable with your story, and I do really truly believe, I said before and I'll say again, that you will make a difference to others who are going through their own set of challenges and circumstances. So thank you, and congratulations on the wonderful work that you've been doing up until this point.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say.
Very
and
well.
Back at you. I mean, you're doing the same thing.
Thank you very, very much, Fred. Be well and take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out for Fred for being here and sharing his awesome story. Do remember